Blood on the Border. A story of how far a father can go to save his child. Part 1. The diagnosis. Jack, are you on the night shift again tonight? Kate leaned against the kitchen doorway, a coffee mug in her hand. Yeah, I said, buttoning my work shirt. The warehouse is swamped with orders. We weren't fighting, not really. But we didn't talk much anymore either. Life had turned into an endless conveyor belt. I worked at the appliance warehouse by day, delivered packages for a small logistics company by night. Kate pulled shifts as a nurse at the clinic on the edge of town. All of it so the mortgage wouldn't crush us and Emily could have what she needed. Emily, 9 years old. My little star. That Monday started like any other. Hot wind, smell of asphalt, my body aching from lack of sleep. I just crawled into bed after a night shift when my phone buzzed. Kate. Her voice was trembling. Jack, come to the hospital. It's about Emily. The air left my lungs. I was there in 20 minutes, still in my work clothes, running through the sterile halls of the children's wing. Kate sat in the doctor's office, pale, hands twisted in her lap. The doctor, an older man with half-moon glasses, shuffled papers with a look I couldn't read. Your daughter has aplastic anemia, he said finally. Her bone marrow has stopped producing blood cells. It's a rare and very serious condition. My brain refused to process the words. What do we do? A bone marrow transplant. And a long rehabilitation. How much? My voice was barely audible. He sighed, looking at me over his glasses. With tests, preparation, post-op care, roughly $240,000. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it sounded like a cruel joke. Our savings? 22,000. Maybe 30 more if we sold the truck and maxed out our credit cards. Not even a quarter of it. Kate's voice was a whisper. We'll find the money. We have to. I nodded. But in my head, a different thought was already forming. How? Would you like me to continue with the expanded part 1, fleshing out their daily struggles, his desperate attempts to get loans, the emotional weight on the family, before we dive into the cartel proposition? Or should I jump straight to the call from Lucas and the first smuggling offer? Part 2. The deal. The weeks after the diagnosis blurred together. I called every bank in Laredo, begged for loans. Your credit score is insufficient, they said. I applied for assistance programs. The waiting list was months long. We didn't have months. At night, I stared at the ceiling while Kate slept beside me, imagining our daughter's hospital bed, imagining a funeral we couldn't afford. That's when the past came calling. The call. It was late, nearly midnight, when my phone lit up with an unknown number. Jack Harris. The voice was rough, familiar in a way that made my stomach turn. Who's asking? Lucas. You remember me, man. From the truck lot job. Been a while. It had been 10 years. Back then, Lucas always had an angle, someone else's money in his pocket, someone else's wife on his arm. I heard about your girl, he said. Sorry, man. That's rough. I stayed silent. I might have something for you, he went on. Something that pays well. Real well. My gut told me to hang up. But then I thought of Emily, her tiny hand gripping mine in the hospital bed. How well? I asked. He named a number. For one trip, I could make nearly half of what Kate and I had saved in 10 years. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. The meeting. We met at a bar on the outskirts of Laredo, the kind of place where nobody asks questions and the neon signs flicker like they're dying. Lucas hadn't changed much. He was heavier, older, but his eyes, calculating and cold, were the same. Good to see you, Jack. He grinned, showing gold-capped teeth. Shame about why we're here. Cut to it, I said. It's simple. You've got a truck. You cross into Mexico, pick up a load, bring it back. No questions, no peeking. You get 50 grand. And if I get caught, you won't. Paperwork's clean. Route's clean. You just drive. I stared at him. What's in the boxes? He smirked. You don't want to know? Seriously, I should have walked away. Instead, I thought of my daughter's pale face, of the number the doctor had said. When Lucas grinned wider. Tomorrow night. Part 3. The crossing. The first run. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. The truck sat outside our house, loaded with what I knew deep down was illegal. I couldn't even look at the boxes. The weight of it made my chest tighten. But the promise of 50 grand kept me moving. Kate had gone to bed early. Emily was at her grandmother's, staying the night. I slipped out quietly, not bothering to wake them. If I'd told Kate what I was doing, I knew she wouldn't have let me go. And I couldn't bear to see the look in her eyes when she realized how deep I was in. The engine of the truck hummed beneath me as I headed toward the border. It felt like I was driving through a tunnel, the air hot and dry, the lights of the city dimming behind me. The road was empty, quiet, like it always was at this hour. When I reached the border checkpoint, my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would explode. I'd done this before, crossing the border for work trips or to visit family. But tonight was different. The stakes were higher than anything I'd ever faced. A Border Patrol officer walked over as I slowed down. He had a broad, sunburned face and looked like he'd been on duty too long. He peered inside the truck cab, then back at me. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "Just a quick delivery. Construction materials." He nodded, his eyes lingering on me for a moment. Then he gave a signal to another officer. A third man, the supervisor, came over to inspect the truck. He ran his hand along the door frame and then knocked on the side of the cab, his eyes scanning the interior of the vehicle. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. I froze. My mind raced. I felt the sweat on my brow as I climbed out, hands shaking. He told me to open the back, but he didn't seem suspicious. He had seen these trucks 1,000 times before. Just another haul. The back door creaked open, and I felt a wave of relief as he glanced inside, uninterested. The seals were intact, and there was nothing for him to question. "All right, you're clear," he said, waving me off. I barely managed to get the engine going again before I felt my whole body exhale in relief. As I passed through, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The checkpoint was fading behind me, and the world of criminals, violence, and threats loomed ahead. Back to the shadows. Once across the border, everything felt different. The road was darker, quieter. My truck rumbled over gravel roads, and every sound felt too loud. I pulled up to a small warehouse, its gates closed, a single light hanging from a rusty pole. A man stepped out, his face obscured by shadows. "Everything good?" he asked, his voice low. "Yeah," I said, swallowing hard. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He opened the back of my truck, and the boxes were unloaded quickly. I couldn't see what was inside. I didn't want to. 50,000, the man said, tossing an envelope on the truck bed. I didn't open it right away. I just nodded. The weight of the money was too much for me to process. The encounter with the cartel. On the way back, I noticed the black pickup behind me. It was the same one from the first time I crossed, but now I could see the men inside more clearly. Tattoos on their necks, stern expressions. They were following me closely, keeping a steady distance. I felt my hands grip the steering wheel tighter, my body tensing as I tried to focus on the road. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Just before I reached the checkpoint, the pickup sped up, pulling alongside me. The man in the passenger seat rolled down his window, pointing a gun toward me. My heart skipped a beat. "Pull over," he said, his accent thick. I didn't hesitate. I swerved the truck off to the side, adrenaline coursing through me. The pickup stopped just behind me. They were here to make sure I didn't screw this up. One of them came up to my window, a grin spread across his face. He was younger, maybe my age, with a look that said he'd killed before. "Everything good?" he asked, his tone calm but filled with menace. "Yeah." I replied, my voice trembling. Everything's fine. He reached into the truck, checking the documents. A brief moment of tension passed as he eyed me carefully. Don't forget who you're working for, he said, shoving the papers back into my hand. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The man backed off, and the pickup sped away, leaving me shaking. I turned back toward the border, praying I could make it back home without anything else going wrong. The price of silence. Back at the checkpoint, the same officer waved me through without a second glance. It was like the night's events hadn't happened, but in my mind, the fear hadn't subsided. I drove home in silence, gripping the wheel tightly as the road stretched on in front of me. The city lights blurred in the distance, and I felt like I was carrying the weight of everything I'd done so far. Not just the money, but the choices. When I pulled up to the house, I left the truck running and went inside. Kate was already asleep. I slipped into bed beside her, my mind still racing, trying to shake the images of what had happened. The 50,000 lay heavy in my pocket, but I didn't even want to look at it. I knew it was just the beginning. Part 4. The escalation. The price of trust. By the second run, I felt like I was already in too deep. The money was too good to ignore. The doctors had already started the preparations for Emily's transplant. We had enough to cover everything. But the fear I felt every time I crossed the border was starting to catch up with me. It wasn't just the threat of being caught. It was the constant weight of knowing what I was doing to my family. I was standing in the garage, staring at the pile of cash I'd just unloaded. My hands shook as I counted the bills, trying to focus on the numbers rather than the thoughts running through my head. The door creaked open behind me, and I turned to see Lucas. His smile was wide, but I noticed something different about him. His eyes, colder, more calculating. He wasn't just here to check the delivery anymore. He was making sure I was still on track. You did good, he said, nodding at the cash. Another successful run. You're in this for good now, Jack. You're one of us. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was no longer just working for him. I was working for the people who controlled him. The cartel had me in their grip, and I knew it. I'll call you about the next trip, Lucas said, and without another word, he walked out the door. I stayed standing there for a long time, staring at the cash, my mind racing. Every time I tried to convince myself that I was doing the right thing, another part of me screamed that I was losing myself. Kate finds out. I couldn't hide the truth from Kate forever. She had begun noticing the late nights, the sudden changes in my behavior, the way I acted when she asked about the business trips. I'd avoided answering her questions, pretending that everything was fine, but she wasn't stupid. One night, I came home late again. This time, though, she was waiting for me in the kitchen, the light casting shadows across her face. She didn't say anything at first. She just watched me as I entered. I closed the door softly behind me, then turned to face her. Jack, she said, her voice tight with concern, we need to talk. My stomach twisted. Kate, I don't. She raised her hand, cutting me off. You've been lying to me for weeks now. I know something's going on. I didn't respond. My throat felt dry, and I couldn't find the words. I know you're hiding something from me, she continued. And it's not just about the late nights or the money. I looked at her, her face pale and drawn, and I realized just how badly I'd been fooling myself. She wasn't blind. She could see the toll this was taking on me. On us. Finally, she spoke again, her voice trembling. Are you involved in something illegal, Jack? I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words stuck in my throat. The truth was already out, and no lie would cover it anymore. I didn't want you to know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But yes, I've been doing things. Things that I can't take back. Kate stepped back, her face drained of color. What do you mean, things you can't take back? I'm working for people, Kate. People I shouldn't be working for. I've been crossing the border with stuff. with goods that they don't belong here. I've been smuggling for the cartel. Her eyes widened in horror. My God, Jack, why? Why would you do that? I dropped my head into my hands, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. I had no choice, I muttered. Emily's sick, Kate. You know that. I thought I could make enough to pay for her treatment. I thought if I just did this once. You didn't just do it once, Jack. And now you've put us all at risk. She was crying now, the tears streaming down her face. Do you know what this means? They'll kill us if we try to back out. We're in too deep. I know, I whispered. I'm so sorry, Kate. I didn't mean to drag you into this. She shook her head, almost in disbelief. You've already dragged us into this, Jack. And there's no way out. The breaking point. The following days were a blur. Lucas kept calling, and with each call, the tension grew tighter. He demanded I make another run, more dangerous than before. The cartel needed to send a message to their rivals. And I was their delivery boy. The job was bigger this time. They loaded my truck with crates that felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. Guns, drugs, cash, things I didn't want to know about, but was forced to transport. As I was about to leave, I saw Kate standing in the doorway, her eyes wide and filled with fear. Jack, please, she begged. Don't go. You can still stop this. Please, before it's too late. I looked at her, at the woman I had promised to protect. But the fear in her eyes wasn't the only thing I saw. I saw the same look I'd seen in the hospital when I told her how much the treatment would cost. That helplessness. I can't, Kate. I can't lose her. I'm doing this for Emily. Please understand. She stood there, frozen. I understand. But I can't lose you too. I didn't know how to answer that, because I was already lost. The final showdown. That night, the job went south. I had made it past the checkpoint, but I wasn't alone. The black pickup appeared again, speeding up behind me. I had no choice. I floored the accelerator, but they were too close. Before I knew it, I was in a high-speed chase, the men in the truck firing shots at me. The tires screeched as I swerved, barely avoiding a roadblock. I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up. The cartel was on my tail, the border was closing in, and I had no way out. A way out. In the end, it wasn't the cartel that stopped me. It was the law. I slammed on the brakes just as a police car pulled in front of me. The officers surrounded me, weapons drawn. My hands went up, and I surrendered. Jack Harris, you're under arrest for smuggling and trafficking, one officer said, his voice cold. But even as they handcuffed me, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. Epilogue. Months later, I sat in a courtroom, my fate in the hands of the judge. Kate stood by me, her face grim but determined. She had forgiven me, but the damage had been done. I wasn't sure what would happen next. I didn't know if I'd ever get out of prison, or if I'd see Emily grow up. But there was one thing I was sure of. I had made the choice to save my daughter. And now, I had to face the consequences.